Go, look, we have Protection One at our house.
And they protect our home, too.
Best feature for me, mobile control. I use my phone, see what the kids are doing, turn on or off the lights, or just arm and disarm the system anywhere I am.
Best feature for me, Protection One customer service. They have live operators, an A-plus Better Business Bureau rating, and offer same-day service.
Plus, with a national footprint, they protect nearly 2 million homes and businesses today.
Oh, no, we actually agree. Protection One is the best defensive player pick.
Get a Protection One home security system starting at just $99. Go to protectionone.com/Mike.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thank you for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. This is what we have for you from a very busy Friday. Bulls make the change in coach. That's not a surprise, but the fallout certainly was. All of the spin. We go live to Chicago for a reaction from that, as well as Stephen A. Smith, his thoughts on that, plus Chip Kelly. Golick and I try to figure out what Adrian Peterson was trying to say on Twitter. At the Mike's NBA Finals version of Next Question and a whole lot more. Thanks for joining us.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
All right. In the meantime, Adrian Peterson had one of those days yesterday where someone gets on Twitter and they start going.
Yep.
And before you know it, people start – we've all seen this happen. And it's the thing you have to avoid doing. People start responding to the things you say. It gets you more fired up. You start trying to explain. You keep going back at them. The next thing you know, you've created a major national discussion when I don't think that was his intention. The whole thing with Adrian Peterson started with him tweeting, I love people who think they know it all. SMH, shaking my head. Research how many NFL teams hasn't honored a player's contract and learned something. So obviously, he's starting in the middle of a discussion.
Yes, he is.
The first tweet is the middle of a conversation. Why? Because he is responding to things you know he's getting.
Yes, he is.
On social media.
Yep.
So the first thing I want to say about this whole thing before I read you the litany of tweets is that there is an example of what I'm always saying is the danger of social media. This whole thing starts because he's responding to people criticizing him for not being at the OTA.
And there are many people that can read things and don't respond. So it's not like don't read your mentions. I completely disagree with you on that. Listen, if you don't have the discipline to not answer back, that's a you problem. You know what? In everybody's head should be Herman Edwards' voice, don't hit send. Because then it's and that's exactly what happened here.
And it never ended. Now, bear in mind, Adrian Peterson, his contract is 6 years, $86 million, $36 million of it guaranteed, signed in 2011. So, obviously, he was then responding to people who were telling him, well, look, you're under contract, you've got to show up. Let me say for the record, I have been saying on this show for 15 years and longer than that, although before that, no one was listening when I said it, that NFL player contracts, the way they are handled, is a joke. I don't know how in the world the players ever allowed this to get where it is now. The owners will never give this up. The owners will shut the sport down for 5 years before they will give players what they deserve, which is guaranteed contracts. In America, when you sign a contract, both sides should have to honor it. And the notion that in the National Football League, the one side does not have to, they can ignore it completely, is ridiculous. Now, that said, right at this moment in time, the last person who needs to be making that case in America is Adrian Peterson. But he did yesterday. Here we go. I'll just read you the tweets. Question for the people. Is a contract two-sided or one? Okay, great, two-sided. Well, why when one party decides, Mr. Blank or Mr. Question Mark, we want you to take a pay cut now or better yet flat out release you? There's never talk about honoring a contract. I know hundreds of players that have wished their team would have honored the contract, but instead they got thrown to the side like trash. A little crazy how one side has so much power they can do as they please when it comes to the contract. But when the other side, the player, feels for whatever reason, family, change of scenery, or simply what they feel just might work best for them, those same laws don't apply. It's all about honoring your contract. Sounds like free will is being a little challenged to me. All I'm saying as a Minnesota Vikings player, we need the same power to do as all 32 teams do they feel under contract or not. It's time for a change. Then again, I'm grateful because at the end of the day, I know some of those same guys that wish a team held on. Also, I appreciate my colleagues, blah, blah, blah. To clarify, since analysts and everyone else have the answers to what place in my heart this rant came from, this is not against the Vikings. I'm just frustrated that our union did not get guaranteed contract for its players. NFL players deserve guaranteed contracts like our NBA and MLB brothers. Owners have the right to release players at will without honoring their contracts. However, players do not have the luxury of saying they want out of their contract, and I won't even get into the franchise tag conversation. Hashtag Players Union. Hashtag Together a Change Will Come.
All right.
Take a deep breath. Your thoughts.
Well, I mean, listen, I understand what he's saying. Every player would like guaranteed contracts. But I wonder if Adrian Peterson was heavy into talking to DeMaurice Smith and other union reps, and I'm not saying he's a union rep, but he's a great player, correct? So great players can have a voice, and he signed this deal for $86 million, 36 of it guaranteed in 2011. If my math is correct, it was a few months when he signed this after the latest CBA had been signed. So, Adrian, while you were happy when you signed this, was your concern then about it wasn't guaranteed? Did you voice that concern to your union? Did you say we need to fight this as the negotiating was going on? Did you call other players and say, guys, we need to finally stick together on this thing until we get guaranteed contracts? Did you do that then when you were happy with the $86 million and the 36 guaranteed? I get what you're saying. Every player would like a guaranteed contract. And players and the union have had the opportunity to try and do what they can when you negotiate a CBA. And you pick the priority. And sometimes the priority are things you don't see right now. They're things for later in retirement that will have a great effect on you instead of now. So you pick your battles. And at some point, the battle has been guaranteed contracts, and it hasn't got. Now, the rookies get them with the rookie wage scale. The first-rounders get guaranteed contracts. And some players now sign deals where you get a signing bonus and partial deals are guaranteed. But listen, my thoughts are he's saying what everybody has been saying for a long time, that they'd like this, but it just, the way it's, to me, the way this started out, and again, it can be misrepresented because you're trying to do it in 140 characters, and in a conversation like this, Adrian, that's impossible. Because when you started this, everybody believed you were talking about you and your situation in Minnesota. And you know what? Maybe you were. And maybe after you got blasted on Twitter, which you did, I'd say 1 out of every 50 was on his side, all of a sudden came the, wait a minute, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all the players in our union. So there's a lot of people that don't believe that was your intent in the first place. And again, that could be the fault of 140 characters or not, but it's a tough discussion to have on Twitter, without question. Because the whole idea of what you said at the end is a fair issue to talk about. Your issue, listen, dude, you were happy when you signed the deal, okay, when you got $86 million. And I don't want to hear it about the franchise tag because players loved it in the beginning. They couldn't get enough of it when it first came out. The first couple of years of that, players begged to be franchise tagged because they were going to make the average of the top 5 players at their position. And then they saw over time, wait a minute, you know what? This isn't quite working out how I want to. So, okay, so you changed on that. But overall, at the end from the message, I get. But coming from Adrian Peterson, coming from a guy who was not suspended on an exempt list all year last year and barely played at all, yet got just about all of his $13 million, and all he has to do is show up to honor his contract this year, and I don't mean in OTAs because those are voluntary, but when the season starts, and he'll get paid his $12.8 million. But I do the other side of it, yes. And that's why the only thing the players can do is hold out and say, I want a new deal, where a team can say, you know what, we signed you to this deal, and now we want a pay cut. But the thing about it is, Adrian, is every player knows the way it works now. When you sign that long deal, that 5, that 6, that 7-year deal, that the back end of that thing, the teams are coming back to you. Teams know it. Players should know it because their agents definitely know that that's going to happen. So the system, if the players think it needs fixing, then the players are the ones that are going to have to at some point stand as strong as they possibly can till they all get what they want. Now, everybody would like guaranteed contracts, but there are a lot of things that you negotiate in a CBA, some more important to some players than others, and that's why, you have all 2,000, 1,800, and 2,000 of the players in mind when you're trying to put your priority list together of what you're negotiating.
Listen, there are some things they're never going to get. They're never going to get, because they can't win a fight with the owners. They just have to pick the small little things they think they can get. They can't win that fight. And that's something they're never going to get. It is the most overwhelmingly lopsided, collectively bargained clause I can imagine, that I could ever think of in sports. Here, we're going to have contracts. You have to honor them, and we do not. It's impossible to believe it ever got to this. That said, Adrian Peterson did so many things wrong yesterday, but the single biggest one is not even responding on hitting send. The single biggest one is he violated the number one cardinal rule in sports. Athletes can't complain about their money. Nope. They just can't do it, even when they're right. Because a lot of what he's saying, he's dead right. But athletes cannot complain about the money they make. No one wants to hear it. It's as simple as that.
That's very true.
And while what happened yesterday is a lot more complicated than that, it can be boiled down at its core to that simple reality. Do not, if you're a professional athlete, especially one who has made, this guy's got to have made over $100 million. Can we look up exactly what he's made in his career? He's got to have made $100 million. If you are a professional athlete, you cannot complain publicly. Do it privately. Have your agent bang down the door, but you cannot complain publicly about money. Listen, you can't do it.
We have both been saying that for years. You just can't do it. You'll never, ever win that battle.
He certainly put a spotlight on himself yesterday. The player spotlight brought to you by Johnsonville. We don't make sausage, we make family and sausage. As we continue, there was a spotlight on another NFL's training camp yesterday for a variety of reasons. You'll hear that. It's important stuff coming up next, and then we'll launch into the... You know, they always talk about how the politics of the city of Chicago.
Oh, boy.
Well, they were in full effect yesterday, but it had nothing to do with an election.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
You claim to have been a good speller growing up. Didn't you once almost win a spelling bee?
I wasn't. I was okay at spelling. Yes. It was very, very low in school, and the words were, I don't even know if they were two syllables, quite honestly.
Okay, so it's not that.
Yeah, the flashcards, I was much better than.
Why is your texting so horrific, I guess is my question.
Because I do it quickly, and I know people will know what I mean. I don't care about the period and the comma. You know what my point is. So.
I didn't want to get sidetracked with that. By the way, just to clarify, Adrian Peterson has made to this point $71.8 million, just under $72 million in his career. Yet another reason why he is not the right person to be taking up this cause at this particular time. That's not the biggest reason, but it is a reason. And then another note here, just another tweet that we got, this one from Johannes, who tweets, if AP is so worried about guaranteed contracts, he should only sign one-year deals and play the system like Revis. Here's the one thing. A running back can't do that, Mike, right? A running back is going to get hit. I don't know, if you get 300 carries, you're going to get hit 1,500 times.
A running back wants to get that big deal, which gets that big signing bonus or big guaranteed money, like a $36 million guarantee. They want to get that because it could be quick for a running back. So they're not going to do one-year deals because it could be over too quickly, and then you're kind of out in the cold.
Okay, on we go. So that was that situation with a training camp, and that wasn't even in training camp because he's not in training camp. Then we had the Eagles training camp beginning yesterday, or the players taking the field, and many of them for the first time really talking in public. One of them was Tim Thibodeau, who was on the field, and there were a lot of reporters there watching him and critiquing the way he's throwing the ball. And of course, then there was Chip Kelly, who was asked to respond to Shady McCoy's accusation. I don't know if accusation is the right word, but Shady McCoy bringing the notion up that Chip Kelly had gotten rid of a lot of the team's best African-American players, and whether that was not coincidental. Chip Kelly acknowledged the conversation yesterday and didn't have a whole lot to say about it.
You did once, when Riley Cooper went for instance in a interview, you said that he has to understand that people have some words you heard. 3 people have said this, you used race in your decisions against you.
It doesn't hurt me. I'm not governed by the fear of what other people say. Events don't elicit feelings. I think beliefs elicit feelings. And I understand what my beliefs are, and I know how I am.
You've heard that the perception of it. Sometimes perception.
You start chasing perception, and you got a long life ahead of you, son. If that's what it's all about. If you're worried about some other's perception of what's going on with you, then you can control one thing. You can control yourself. And I know how we run this organization. It's not run that way.
At one point, he said, talk to the players. I don't have a problem. Talk to the players. See if they have a problem. The players generally defended Chip Kelly completely. The one thing I wonder about this, Mike, going over it, is right at the beginning of Chip Kelly's tenure, they had what I think you could describe as a crisis situation of this sort with Riley Cooper.
Yes.
And you can't help but wonder if some lingering resentment that for the good of the team, a lot of people sort of, played down at the time, remained as a result of that, and some of that is what has come out since.
Riley Cooper got an extension, after time there, and we know guys like Shady McCoy, Deshaun Jackson were gone. Listen, when he took over, Andy Reid's last season, we're breaking this down white-black here, gang. This is what the conversation is. Andy Reid's last season in 2012, 68% of the Eagles were black. That's in line with the league average. Last year for the Eagles, 51% of the players with Chip Kelly were black. That's 70% lower than the NFL average. 14 of the Eagles' 21 draft picks under Chip Kelly have been African-American. That is right in line with the league average. Listen, I'm not in that locker room. I'm not sure where this is coming. I could sit here and read off. I mean, this is where we are. The additions this year, the subtractions this year. I mean, is that what we're doing? We're counting how many white guys came and how many black guys left. I mean, this is where we're going? I don't buy any of this. I mean, I can read you the additions and the departures, and what Shady McCoy said would make no sense at all if I read them to you. If you want me to, I will. We can say white guy, African American, white guy. I mean, if this is where we're going, I can do that for you, and it's going to show that it doesn't make sense in what went on this offseason, even though Shady McCoy was gone this year and Deshaun Jackson was gone last year. I don't buy it. As some players have said, they think it's a disgruntled player. Trey Thomas, another player who was on this team and is somewhere and is not with the Eagles anymore, has kind of said Shady McCoy, he thought he was right. Others have said they're completely wrong. So it's going to continue with the conversation. I don't even know where to go.
Well, we'll get a few more thoughts on that as we go.
Mike and Mike.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, Harbor Bay tees are just $19.99 each when you buy 2 or more.
Mike and Mike.
All right, as I mentioned, I was hearing from just about everybody I know in Chicago yesterday, lining up on one side or another of this business with the Bulls and their coach and their history and their quote-unquote culture, which they put front and center in the discussion yesterday. So let's try and sort of sort through what's really going on here by bringing in our buddy Tommy Waddle from Chicago's ESPN 1000, host of Waddle and Sylvie Afternoons in Chicago. Tommy, good morning, and go ahead. We'll give you the floor and your view. What's the reality? We've heard from both sides heavily. What's the reality here?
First of all, never a dull moment here in the Windy City, at least recently. I've been listening to everything you guys are saying, and I think in a lot of ways you're hitting the nail on the head. But to me, if you break it down to its most simple form, if you are winning championships, it can be your way or the highway. If you're not winning championships, you got to play nice in the sandbox. And the truth is, Tom Thibodeau's got a boss. And if you're not willing to have an open line of communication or take suggestions from your boss, and you're in a scenario where you've done well, but you haven't reached the top of the NBA mountain, I'm sorry, you have to listen to what they have to say. And in a lot of instances, you have to implement what they're asking you to do, which in my opinion hasn't been a ton. So I think, again, in its most simple form, that's where we're at, and it's unfortunate because both sides have done some really good things.
How much do you feel management blames Thibodeau for some of the injuries or losing in playoffs because of injuries, because of the way he practices players and doesn't conserve minutes?
I think that management subscribes to kind of a modern approach where things are evolving, and I don't want to speak for them either, but we're in a new era. Back in the day, we keep hearing people talking, Jeffrey and who I love as an analyst, but also has a dog in the race, so to speak. He and Tom are very close. Things were done differently in the 90s. Things are done differently now. I don't think they blame Tom Thibodeau at all for Derrick Rose's injuries, but I think the way that Joakim Noah was handled, especially as he got older and coming off surgery, I think that was an issue with them for sure.
Mike and Tom Waddle, one of the things that I've been struck by, Tommy, was that the Bulls, Gar Forman was the first I heard use it, and then Jerry Reinsdorf used it in his statement yesterday. They used the word culture, a culture of working together, and the facts simply don't back that up, right? When Phil was there, you were there in town at the time, and I was covering at the time. I mean, the reality is they didn't have that with Phil Jackson. They can say they had it, but they didn't have that with Phil Jackson 20 years ago, and they don't have it with Tom Thibodeau now. So why are they making reference? Let me phrase the question this way. What do you think is the culture of the Bulls front office and its relationship with coaches?
Well, I think you make some really good points, Mike. I do. But again, I think I referenced the issue of if you're winning titles, it can be your way or the highway, or you'll find a way to get to the finish line even if you're not talking with one another. If you're not winning titles, then you're talking about an entirely different relationship dynamic. And I think that, again, I'm not in those meetings. I'm on the outside looking in, but here were the issues, I think. First and foremost, you had Joakim Noah coming off of surgery, and all they really wanted to do was make sure that Joe was going to have enough in the tank of the postseason, so they said 32 minutes. Joe played basically 32 minutes. You call it a minutes restriction. In most organizations, we call it an organizational plan, and Tom really didn't want to follow that. So, look, I don't know where the trust is or where it's not. I just know that neither side could get along anymore, and ultimately this had to be the resolution.
Tommy, let's get to the bottom of this. For those who've not followed it closely across the country, and I'll just ask you in whatever limited dealings you have, but certainly with great insight that you have into the situation, do you think Tom Thibodeau was a difficult person to deal with as compared to other coaches during his time in Chicago?
I think Tom did a great job winning a lot of basketball games. They never got to where they wanted to go in the postseason, but yeah, I think he was difficult. It was his way or the highway, Granny, and ultimately they didn't get to where they wanted to go, and that's why I think we see this side, these two sides weren't able to come to an agreement.
So where do we go next? Where are they? I mean, obviously the name Fred Hoiberg is out there. Michael Wilbon spoke almost vehemently against why he wouldn't want Hoiberg. Green, you want to play that?
Yes,
one?
I have that. Let me play that. This was Michael Wilbon yesterday on Sports. I have so much on my screen. Here it is. This is Michael Wilbon and his thoughts on Fred Hoiberg.
He's a fine coach in college. He's a fine coach. This guy just had a heart procedure.
Yeah.
So you're going to come and you're going to follow a guy who just won 65% of his games and did get to a conference final. This is not a college guy who's dibble-dabble back in the fourth in the pro. No. He has no history with this.
That's Michael Wilbon speaking as a fan and a journalist with SVP and Rosillo yesterday.
So the thought has been Hoiberg. Your thought on hearing what Michael Wilbon said about why you wouldn't hire him?
Well, I think, Mike, he's been he played in the league for 10 years. He was an assistant general manager in the league. He didn't get to where he wanted Iowa State to go for sure, but I wouldn't necessarily write off Fred Hoiberg as a good choice. In fact, I think Fred Hoiberg is going to be the choice. How ultimately that will play out, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the next guy that comes in because Tom did do such a good job in the regular season, but I wouldn't write off Fred Hoiberg, and I think ultimately he's going to get the job.
One other name out there, the hottest name out there is Tyronn Lue. Ty Lue, the assistant coach with the Cavaliers, is
famous for having dragged David Blatt out of calling a timeout.
Saving their season. He is going to be a head coach very soon. I guess on that note of with Ty and with Hoiberg, who haven't been head coaches in the NBA, do you think because of what the Bulls have been through with butting heads with their head coach, that they're going to get a coach that they know they're going to be able to control?
Well, control's a strong word, but certainly have an open dialogue with. I guess we could call it control, but certainly someone, Mike, that if they decide that they want to have some input in how the organization is going to be run, I mean, I don't think it's a ridiculous request to have the coach be open to some of their basketball concepts. And I don't know if it'll be Tyronn Lue. I'm not so sure from my own personal perspective, regardless of how far the Cavs go if they get past the Warriors, that David Blatt's going to be back. And if David Blatt is not back, Tyronn Lue, in my humble opinion, will be coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I don't know that that's the route they'd go. But certainly, I think you heard from the Jerry Reinsdorf release, they're going to look for someone who doesn't have from the get-go a my way or the highway approach. And they want to have an open line of communication, and the front office who's selecting the players wants to have a say in some of the things they're doing, and I don't think that's unreasonable.
What did you guys hear from the fans yesterday, Tom?
I think the majority of them, Mike, are very much in support of Tom Thibodeau, and I understand. And look, as I said earlier, to me, the most difficult thing to process here is that, wow, we really had something good from both angles. Tom Thibodeau did an excellent job helping Derrick Rose become an MVP, helping Joakim Noah become the Defensive Player of the Year and developing him. Jimmy Butler came from obscurity and is now an all-star. He's done a really good job with guys, but ultimately there are some negatives as well. He wasn't willing to take his foot off the gas pedal at times. He did not adjust offensively in the postseason. Their offense got stagnant. They led the NBA in the postseason this year in 24-second shot clock violations. They just, listen to Chauncey Billups and others on our network who have talked about the Bulls being great defensively, but offensively they're stuck in the early 90s, and they just need to adjust. So, Tom did some really good things in the front office. Did a nice job selecting talent at the back end of the first round, and they should have been able to play nice in the sandbox, guys, and they weren't able to. And as a Bulls fan, it's just a shame because both sides have done some really good things.
It's Tommy Waddle. You're here this afternoon in Chicago on ESPN 1000 with our buddy Mark Silverman. Thank you, Tommy. Thanks, Tom.
You got it. You got it, guys. Be good.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
An all NBA Finals version of Next Question. So we'll go through some of these questions looking forward to the finals, and there are a lot of bigger picture questions. We'll do Next Question here with Mike and Mike. Here we go.
If LeBron can win one title for Cleveland, will that mean more for his legacy than anything he did in Miami?
Well, by the way, I know. Listen to how we voiced that. Listen to the urgency with which that was
really.
If LeBron can win. If LeBron can win one title for Cleveland, will that mean more for his legacy? The answer is?
Yes, I think it is. Outside of getting his first title, which was the start of a few.
Well,
absolutely.
then no. And you just said why the answer is no. Winning his first title did more for his legacy than anything he does in Cleveland could do. Because think back to who LeBron James was in July of 2011. LeBron James was a villain. He had left Cleveland high and dry. He was generally despised. And he had just, I'm going to use the word, choked in the NBA Finals. He was as low as he could be. And people will tell you that he couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. Winning that first championship completely changed his legacy. And while I understand bringing a title to Cleveland will be very meaningful, nothing could be as meaningful as that.
Well, you're wrong.
Is that it? Is that all the insight you have for me?
Well, when you say it because you know I'm right, and I'm saying it because, you're right. The first one was the most important.
Next question.
Which big three would you rather have? LeBron, Kyrie, and Tristan Thompson, or Steph, Clay, and Draymond Green?
Now, you want to put some numbers to it. The Golden State trio averaged just under 20 points per 48 minutes, and the Cleveland trio averaged just a hair over 13 points for 48 minutes. It's not even close. I'll take the best player in the world and his two guys with him. That's LeBron, Kyrie, and Tristan. Tristan is going to get the rebounds. We know Kyrie is a ball player. The health, obviously, is going to be the situation there, and it's LeBron James. To me, end of story.
Yeah, as far as how they're going to play in this series, I'm not sure. I don't disagree with you because I don't think Kyrie Irving is going to be Kyrie Irving. Yes, any trio that involves LeBron James is going to have an enormous advantage, but if you ask me right now to predict, I think Golden State is going to win, and I think that those three guys are going to be the reason why. So while I agree with you going forward, I would take LeBron and Kyrie. For the next 2 weeks, I think that would take the other guys.
And we disagree yet again.
All right, next question.
If the Cavs lose the finals, will and should that negatively impact LeBron's image?
No, I don't think so. I don't know if a lot of us picked them to get there this year and lose, basically. But I do think the expectation is he is going to win a title in Cleveland and win that first championship in a major sport since 1964. So I don't think if they lose this year that is going to damage his image at all.
I don't want to hedge my answer. Here's what I'll say. Unless he just plays terribly, unless LeBron...
Right.
unimaginably loses the ability to play basketball, the answer is no. It will not affect and should not affect negatively his image. He has taken this team farther, or at least as far as they could realistically have been expected to go, and especially without Kevin Love and Kyrie, and we'll see what his relative health is. I think unless LeBron just completely falls into a puddle, I do not think there's any way this thing winds up being a negative for him. Next question.
Will the outcome of the finals have any impact on what Kevin Love decides to do in the offseason?
He has a player option for $16.7 next year. You know what he'll see? He'll see this team went on into the playoffs and won a title without him at all. And that could be something, I'm not sure which way you would take it. You could take it as, boy, when I come back and I'm one of the big three again, I'm really going to add to this team and we can win a few titles. Or, they don't really need me here. Maybe I'll just head off somewhere else and be more the focal point of a team.
My answer to the very specific question, will the outcome have any impact on what he decides to do?
I think it's no.
My gut feeling is no.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Yeah. I think he already knows what he wants to do.
I completely agree with that.
I don't know what that is, but I think I would guess he already knows what he wants to do. Next question.
Over under one flagrant foul as a result of something Matthew Dellavedova does on the court.
Now, is this question mean Dellavedova getting a flagrant foul? Or just a flagrant foul?
No, a flagrant as a result of something he does.
Because Dellavedova has never received a flagrant foul in his career at 153 games. Not like it's an
he should have against Taj Gibson.
No, he should not have.
Your boy Delly.
Over, but it will have. Dellavedova will not get a flagrant, but it will be over one. He will prod somebody into that.
He will instigate something. He will set off a little fire, and then watch with a smile as it burns. I agree with you. I think Dellavedova, I'll take the over on flagrant fouls.
Which team do you think has a better chance to win multiple titles over the next 5 seasons?
I love that question.
I do too.
It's a great question.
Warriors are younger, about 2 years younger, 27 to 29.
But the answer is Cleveland.
Well, the answer is absolutely Cleveland. Yeah, the best player. A lot of things lean toward the best player. And LeBron still's got, I'd say, half a decade in him of getting the job done. So I would definitely lean toward them. And let's also be honest, they're in the easier conference again.
I was waiting for you to say that. Yeah. I was afraid that if I cut you off and said it, you would say, Greeny, I was about to say that.
I would have. Not in that dumb voice, though.
It doesn't. It wouldn't matter if you flip-flop them. The team in the East has a better chance.
Yeah.
At least for the foreseeable future, the team in the East has the better chance. One more.
If Jordan had lost one of his 6 finals, how differently would we be looking at his career?
Well, it depends on those that, hadn't lost in the finals at all. Like we talk about Joe Montana being 4-0 and Brady being 4-2. Brady got there more, but Joe never lost. So people put a lot on that. So it's not that Jordan would have lost one. It would have been, who are we comparing him to that didn't lose one?
I in my opinion, would we be looking at him differently? A little bit. I mean, one of the things that Jordan has going for him, and it's a big thing, is he won 6 titles, he was 6-0 in the finals, and he was the MVP of all of them.
It's pretty good.
So if it's as good as it gets. If those were not intact, then of course it would be a little bit different.
The best of Mike and Mike.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
That's well done. Golick loves that spelling bee. I enjoy it. We were there one year working it, and I enjoyed it. And I really like the kids. It's nice to see the really smart kids who might not be the most athletic kids celebrated.
Well, that's one of the things we got to do when we were there before the finals, like a, for lack of a better term, production meeting when we got to talk to them all, and they're good kids.
And the parents, they're great.
That's their life at that time of what they do, and they put a lot into it.
So we're extraordinarily busy this morning, as you can tell from the open. There's just so much going on. Barry Melrose is going to be in our studio in about 10 minutes. We'll look ahead to the 2 Game 7s in the hockey. Then Stephen A. Smith will join us with his take on both the firing of the coach in Chicago and the situation surrounding the coach in Philadelphia with the Eagles. And maybe as a way to set the table for all of it, I'm going to do like an elongated at the mics.
Okay.
Which is interesting people saying interesting things. I have so much good sound. Now, I'm told that there has been a delay or a holdup in the FIFA meetings right now because of a bomb threat.
Yes.
We're still trying to get more detail on that, but of course, At about 11 o'clock this morning Eastern time, so roughly 3 hours from now, is when there was an expectation that the vote for the new president of FIFA will take place, and the overwhelming belief continues to be that Sepp Blatter will be reelected. Just imagine if the head of practically any American entity got up there after so many people at the top levels of his management were arrested, facing serious charges of corruption, and he got up there and said, look, this may be awful, but you certainly can't blame me.
I know many people hold me ultimately responsible for the actions and reputation of the global football community, whether it's a decision for the hosting of a World Cup or a corruption scandal. We, or I, cannot monitor everyone all of the time. If people want to do wrong, they will also try to hide it. But it must fall to me to bear the responsibility for the reputation and well-being of our organization and to find a way forward to fix things.
That guy's hilarious. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Listen, and I'm sure there will be those, there are countries backing him, and there are those that would believe him that say, listen, you know, we talk about this on a very much smaller scale, that coaches can't be responsible for their players 24/7. They're going to do things, putting it into terms we use more than what we see here. But when something is this bad and this corrupt, fair or unfair, you got to wipe it all out. You got to say, okay, this is over. We need a whole, fresh turn over here to start again.
His reelection will illustrate the problem, the extraordinary corruption. Nothing could possibly illustrate that problem more directly and specifically than the reelection of Sepp Blatter, which is widely expected to take place today. The U.S. is not going to vote for him, but most of the other countries that he has managed to curry favor with financially are going to. The point of it is this, Mike, that when he says, well, look, none of this stuff, you can't blame me for any of this. Can you imagine the alpha person in any other organization saying that? Roger Goodell, however it is you think he may have mishandled the Ray Rice situation and all of that, can you imagine if he had said, well, look, this has nothing to do with me. Yeah. You can't expect me to be in charge of this. Football coaches get blamed for a player missing class. Yeah. This guy's taking no responsibility for major widespread corruption.
Yeah. It is. All you can do is chuckle, yet chuckle all you want. He's going to get reelected.
Going to get reelected.
Once they reconvene, by this morning, as we mentioned, around 11 o'clock, he's going to be reelected. And FIFA will go on with a bunch of different people, but he'll still be heading it.
All right, so that's where we stand as far as that's concerned. Again, we'll keep you posted, and if you are interested in that story, you can follow Bob Lee's Twitter feed, among many others. He's doing a very good job of following that all morning long. It's where I'm getting a lot of my information. Chip Kelly, and we'll talk about this with Stephen A. coming up a little bit later in this hour, for the first time really sort of publicly responding to charges that some of his decisions may be motivated by issues of race. Those were made by Shady McCoy, LaShawn McCoy, superstar running back for the Eagles, who was traded away this year, one of several high-profile African-American stars who have been one way or another let go by the Eagles, whether traded or just allowed to go in the last couple of years under Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly responded yesterday.
I've got great respect for LaShawn. However, in that situation, I think he's wrong. We put a lot of time in looking at the characters and factors that go into selection and retention of players, and color's never been one of them. So.
Were you hurt by it?
No.
Is it something you have to address in the locker room?
No, I haven't.
Have you talked to LaShawn since the trade?
No, I reached out to him twice, and he didn't accept my call, and then I talked to his agent and told him I'd love to talk to him at some point in time, but I haven't had a chance.
So, listen, we threw out a lot of numbers about this, the percentage of African-Americans on his roster, 51% last year, how much lower that is than the average, but his draft picks are of African-Americans as compared to white players is the same, is average with everybody else. So you throw out the numbers. You brought it up, and you're right, we both talked about it. I think this stems from the Riley Cooper situation. I don't think there's any doubt about that. of what went on, and that we don't know everything that went on, but maybe not so much about numbers of this as the perception in the locker room because of what Riley Cooper did, how it was treated. Michael Vick ended up standing up for him, but then Cooper was rewarded with a contract for play on the field, and others players that were perceived as better than him,
who are better than him,
are gone, are absolutely gone. Now, you can say Shady McCoy is gone, but they did bring in DeMarco Murray and paid him a ton of money as well, so you want to call that one a wash, even though Shady McCoy was the leading rusher in the league 2 years ago and third this past year, but we know what DeMarco Murray did. So I do believe there is that hanging in that locker room without a doubt.
Sometimes you can add 2 and 2 together and get 5, but in this case, it certainly seems when you had an event like that one, there have to be reverberations that don't just go away, even over 2 years in the scheme of things is not that long a period of time. Maybe the genesis of some of this is in that. We'll talk to Stephen A. about it coming up. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you can save before you switch. Continuing with our at the mics with different people saying different things. DeMaurice Smith, Executive Director of the NFL Players Association, I did an interview with our Sal Palantonio yesterday. It was really interesting. On any other day, we'd have played you all of this by now, but there's just so much going on. One of the things he says is that he believes Ray Rice has been blackballed by the National Football League.
This, unfortunately, is a league that has a history of blackballing players. We talked today about a player named Bill Radovich who was blackballed in the 1940s. I find it hard to believe that a player of Mr. Rice's caliber hasn't at least got one offer from a team to come work out.
Well, I can tell you exactly why. The age-old thing, DeMaurice, and you know it, is how good are you compared to what is it going to bring you on the team? And he's not what he was. He's just not. Because, and I know you have the video of what he did. So who wants to bring that on knowing that the return on the field isn't going to be that great? Because you look at a guy who wasn't blackballed and you read the police report on what he did, look no further than Greg Hardy, who was convicted by a bench judge. And we went on, he had the right to a trial, and the accuser didn't show up, so it got thrown out. But he was convicted of a bench trial. And when you read the report, we don't have video that goes with it, but when you read it, it's horrific. He signed with the team. Now, there may have only been a couple involved, the teams that wanted him, but all you need is one. And you know why? Is because he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. Ray Rice is not nearly one of the best running backs in the league, and there's video to go with it on the negative side for him. No team wants to take that on. So you want to call it blackballed? That's fine. You can call it that. I know if I was on a team, I wouldn't pick him up, and I would have no problem saying that. You call it whatever you want, but I don't think he's good enough on the field to dissuade what's going to happen going on off the field of what we saw.
I think you said it all exactly right, and I think that in his case it's even worse, because with Hardy you know what he can do on the field. With Rice you don't know.
Nope.
So what you might be doing is bringing him in to work out, which is demonstrating to the world you'd be willing to sign him. You take on all of the criticism that's going to come from that, and then it might turn out he can't play at all, and you've got nothing out of it.
Or you sign him, he gets hurt, and you're paying him to sit and do nothing.
Well, that could happen with anybody.
No, I understand that.
But the fact is that I don't know how many people know whether or not Ray Rice could even play anymore. So I think that is the circumstance we deal in there. One more, and then we'll get Barry in here looking ahead to the Game 7s again. If you're just joining us, Jeff Van Gundy went off yesterday on Stephen A. Smith's radio show on Sirius XM, talking about the Bulls firing of Tom Thibodeau and talking about their culture and the reality of the history that with Phil Jackson and now with this coach, there has been a problem between the organization and the man running the team.
Listen, they're going to try to put out, again, that they've had all this success. They've had 2 periods of success, really, long periods. The Jackson era when he was being undermined, and they talked, Jerry Reinsdorf did about a culture of being tied together. That was the furthest thing from being tied together. And Tom's time there. Gar Foreman was quoted as saying they had some success. Well, I know this from his time leading that organization. It's been his only time of success is when Tom has been in charge. So I just disagree with how they go about things. Listen, it's not the bad thing is not being fired. The bad thing is having to endure the person over a long period of time that's well coordinated and really downright vicious.
So there's Jeff Van Gundy. Again, we will go back. We'll get Stephen A. in here in about 20 minutes and get his thoughts on this. We went live to Chicago a little while ago. The reality is always somewhere in the middle.
Right.
If you're Tom Thibodeau and you don't win a championship, you got to play nice with your bosses, and it doesn't seem
he doesn't do that. Your bosses want to be played nice with. They want to feel like they have a little more input than maybe what Thibodeau was giving them. He was doing what he wanted to do. Management didn't like that. And then you get into what effect was there on the court on the way he coached players that didn't have anything to do with minutes played, injuries, and things like that, and have an effect on the season.
I think he's a great coach.
I do as well.
He will land somewhere, and he will continue to win games.
Mike and Mike.
The star of ESPN2's First Take, and, of course, his own terrific radio show on Sirius XM, our buddy Stephen A. Smith, is on the Subway First Take hotline. Good morning, Stephen A.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We are well. We want you to sort out two things for us. Let's start with the coach's firing in Chicago, which was extraordinarily unsurprising and yet created a level of spin from supporters of both sides, unlike practically anything I can remember in recent memory. And certainly Jeff Van Gundy with extraordinary comments on your radio show yesterday that we played a lot this morning. So cut through it all for us, Stephen A. What really happened? Who's right and who's wrong?
Well, first of all, what really happened is that Tom Thibodeau had a very, very abrasive relationship in the end with John Pax and the VP basketball operations, along with GM Garth Foreman. We don't have time to go into the details as to why that was or is, but the bottom line is that those guys did not get along. They felt like he was essentially working players too hard, not being cognizant of preserving these individuals for years and years to come, really playing them 38, 40 minutes plus in meaningless games, not really monitoring minutes, running them into the ground per se, and more importantly, not being willing to take their advice, particularly when they decided to let go of Ron Adams, an exceptional defensive mind in NBA circles. You got rid of him as an assistant coach. You really, really did it. So Tom Thibodeau would come back and hire an offensive mind, which is what Garth Foreman and John Paxson wanted him to do. He refused to do so, and obviously they have the ear of Jerry Reinsdorf, because Jerry Reinsdorf is an individual that believes that if he has to do everything, then he doesn't have the right management team under him. So he really leans on his general managers, his VP of operations. He heeds their words, and this is the guy that was once a staunch supporter of Tom Thibodeau, who obviously ultimately turned against him himself based on the letter I'm sure you both saw yesterday, where Jerry Reinsdorf said what he said about Tom Thibodeau. But in the end, I still side with Tom Thibodeau in this respect. The man won games, 255 and 139, even though he didn't have a great playoff record. He got him to the playoffs each year. He overachieved on several occasions. And more importantly than anything, if you're going to let him go, then let him go and decide to move in a different direction. To have the press conference that they had yesterday, for Jerry Reinsdorf to issue the statement that he issued, it was just simply Bush League in low class. I know Garth Foreman and John Paxson to be better than that. And obviously they weren't the ones that were quoted in the statement. It was Jerry Reinsdorf, but it was clearly a collective effort by the hierarchy of the Chicago Bulls to malign and sully Tom Thibodeau, and he has never done that to them. So it was really unfortunate, the classless way in which they elected to ultimately handle all of this.
So as they move forward and look for a new coach, I know the name Fred Hoiberg comes to mind. He's never been an NBA head coach. Even if it's not him or someone else, the direction they go, Stephen A., will it be someone, for lack of a better term, that management feels they can control, if that's the right word?
Well, I don't know if it's the right word, Golick, but I would tell you I don't blame you for thinking that way, and it stands to reason that that's what they're aiming for, somebody who's a bit more communicative and personable, somebody that they can talk to. And in their defense, I will say this. They are the bosses. You were just a coach. You got to acquiesce to some things that they want. You got to do some things that they ask you to do. You can't always tell the bosses no and expect to stick around. That's just any profession, y'all. You tell your bosses no enough, you're going to end up out of a job. And that's what happened with Tom Thibodeau. But at the same time, if you're looking at his successors, it's clearly going to be somebody they're more comfortable communicating with. There is no doubt about that. But I don't want to hear this stuff about Fred Hoiberg. He is a good coach, but I don't see Iowa playing for any Final Fours. But more importantly than that, the guy has had 2 heart surgeries. I mean, and you're coaching college basketball. You're talking about coming to the NBA where it's an 82-game schedule, 41 road games at least, and we're not even getting into the postseason. And you're talking about a great sports town like Chicago, who's obviously also very demanding. I'm not sure that's the right situation to bring somebody like Fred Hoiberg into. But that's just me.
Mike and Mike, Stephen A. Smith were presented by Progressive Insurance. The other topic that you're the perfect person to ask because of your perspective, you were the first person I heard talking about this, which were the issues of when Shady McCoy left Philadelphia, his belief and maybe an undercurrent of belief that Chip Kelly got rid of a lot of high-profile African-American players and that was not a coincidence. And one of the things that I've been wondering, Steve, and I'd love to get your take on this, is it feels to me as though 2 years ago, that locker room, that organization went through a stunning experience. The issue with Riley Cooper and what happened, the kind of thing that can tear apart an organization easily, and they held it together. And that does not mean that while they put a good public face on it, that there were not simmering resentments that were caused by the way that situation was handled in a lot of different places. And that maybe that is contributing to what we are now hearing 2 years later with players who are no longer there. Do you think there is a connection between those two things? What is your sense of this now that Chip Kelly has commented on it publicly for the first time?
Well, I don't think that's the connection. I happen to know that it is, which is why I was the first to report it. And I know that it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Let me be the first to say I don't care. Let's be clear about something here, especially from me. Nobody's calling, at least myself. I'm not calling Chip Kelly a racist. I don't know this man. I've only met him one time. It would be incredibly irresponsible for me to attach that word or that label to him. I think it's reprehensible and irresponsible for anybody that hasn't dealt with him on a personal level to come out and definitively say something like that about this man. That's false. That's wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of that. What I will say, however, is that I did hear earlier Dolan give out the number where he talked about 68% of the players on the Philadelphia Eagles were black under the Andy Reid era, if I remember correctly, whereas they're only 51% of them black under the Chip Kelly era. I'm here to tell you that doesn't even have anything to do with this. The fact is, you're looking for the best player, regardless of ethnicity, and whoever you think is better for your system as it pertains to talent, we all have to respect that. There are plenty of black players on the Philadelphia Eagles to not get into ethnicity on that level. Where ethnicity comes into play as it pertains to the question marks that players may have, guys, is not about the numbers. It's about the things Chip Kelly and his supporters have alluded to in terms of the kind of player he's looking for, not just on the football field, but character. That is where Riley Cooper comes into play. Because with Riley Cooper and what he said and the uproar that it caused, it's one thing to look at that on its face and say, okay, it happens, let's move on. But Riley Cooper was supposedly needing to go away, to step away from the game a little while, get some counseling, some sensitivity training, et cetera, et cetera. Guys, he was going on a Friday. He was back on a Tuesday. That's literally how that happened. That resonated with players. Then when you combine that with the fact that Deshaun Jackson is gone, and he was talked about like a dog because of leaks from the organization in the aftermath of his departure. When you combine that with LaShawn McCoy ultimately being gone, an elite deep threat in Deshaun Jackson, an elite running back in LaShawn McCoy, and a serviceable number one and a quality number two in Jeremy Maclin ultimately being gone because it wasn't a priority for them to keep him. But you re-signed Riley Cooper, and the excuse is he's a good blocker at receiver. That's not going to fly with a lot of folks, particularly in that locker room. So if you're LaShawn McCoy, you can say what you want. You have to back that up. If you're other players in that locker room, you have to specify what you're alluding to as it pertains to Chip Kelly. What I was saying is this is the National Football League. We are constantly told about the importance of talent. I need Chip Kelly to explain how I could let go of Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, Jeremy Maclin, but keep Riley Cooper when the only other serviceable receiver I have is Jordan Matthews out of Vanderbilt. But, oh, by the way, we're trying to win football games. You have to understand that if you are an African American and you witness that kind of stuff transpire in the aftermath of Riley Cooper, you're going to stand up and ask the question, excuse me, sir, what exactly is it that you're trying to say? And that is what I did, because that is what the players told me. They never said to me, oh, he's a racist. He doesn't like black people. They said, Stephen A., this is a bit fishy to us. I don't like how this feels or looks. I don't know what's going on. And that is exactly what I went on the air and said.
And I think the beginning of it really was Michael Vick talking about it last summer with the stuff that happened between him and Riley Cooper. Now, he didn't feel good about the way that thing shook out, and it continues here. Stephen A., it's terrific. Thank you so much.
Stephen.
We'll see you at 10 o'clock.
Take care, guys.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Greeny, good news. You're in the family, bud.
What? The family?
Yeah, my sausage family. You know, the friends, neighbors, and radio co-host I invite over whenever I cook juicy Johnsonville brats.
Oh, that's very sweet. I'm part of your family now?
Yeah, you are. Well, my sausage family. It's kind of like family. Means I can ask you for favors or money or, you know, if I need a place to crash or someone to wash my car or something like that.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you're entitled to any inheritance or the use of my pool or my car or crashing at my place. I mean, that's strictly for real family, you know?
You know, I'm starting to wonder what's in this for me.
Well, the juicy brats for starters. And, you know, you get to wash my car whenever you want or lend me money, no questions asked, or you get to have me crash on your couch for free.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's a pretty good deal.
Great. Welcome to the sausage family, bud.
At Johnsonville, we don't make sausage. We make family and sausage.